Hello, you're watching the Capitol Report on NTD. I'm Alina Weisskopf. Here's what's coming up tonight. President Trump says markets will boom as stocks fell Thursday over his new tariffs. What's the president's prediction on the economy's direction? And what the White House says about Americans' relief. Israeli forces have now taken control of the city of Rafah in southern Gaza. Meanwhile, Israel's prime minister travels to Hungary, defying an international arrest warrant. How do President Trump's reciprocal tariffs relate to U.S. national security and food security? And what is the history behind tariffs and trade? We'll hear insights from Charles Benoit, trade counsel for the Coalition of a Prosperous America.
This is Capitol Report, live from our global headquarters in our nation's capital. Here's Steve Lance.
As investors grapple with concerns about new tariffs, U.S. stocks lost around $3 trillion in market value on Thursday, the largest one-day decline in 5 years. But President Trump says the market will boom just like a patient will heal after an operation. NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao has more.
I think it's going very well.
Despite stocks plunging on Thursday, President Trump tells us he's optimistic about the market and the country.
It was an operation, like when a patient gets operated on. The markets are going to boom, the stock is going to boom, the country is going to boom, and the rest of the world wants to see, is there any way they can make a deal?
The Dow fell over 1,600 points on Thursday as all three major market indexes posted their worst day since 2020. Companies with production lines in countries like China are hit the hardest, with Apple losing around $300 billion or over 9% of its market value. The sell-off comes after Trump announced on Wednesday a 10% baseline tariff on all countries and higher reciprocal tariffs on countries he says are treating the U.S. especially unfairly in trade.
They do it to us and we do it to them.
And while some are warning of higher prices,
because of the crippling Trump tariff tax.
The White House press secretary says the president will bring down the cost of living through
massive deregulation, an energy boom, and tax cuts.
And as some farmers are expected to be impacted by tariffs, the agriculture secretary promises relief.
We are setting up the infrastructure that if in fact we have some economic consequences in the short term to our farmers and perhaps our ranchers, that we will have programs in place to solve for that.
Trump's new 25% tariffs on foreign-made cars and parts also went into effect on Thursday. The White House touting reactions by some automakers, Ford offering American buyers discount pricing, General Motors increasing truck production in Indiana, and Stellantis now pausing production at some of its Canadian and Mexican plants. And all this happening as companies are adjusting to President Trump's new tariffs aimed at bringing manufacturing back to the U.S. Reporting from the White House, Iris Tao, NTD News.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu traveled to Hungary, defying an international warrant for his arrest. The International Criminal Court accuses Netanyahu of being responsible for alleged war crimes in the Gaza Strip. NTD's Jason Perry has the latest.
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu traveled to Hungary on Thursday, where he was greeted by Prime Minister Viktor Orban. This was only Netanyahu's second trip abroad since the International Criminal Court, or ICC, issued a warrant for his arrest. They accuse him of being responsible for alleged war crimes committed in the Gaza Strip. And under the current rules of the ICC, the government of Hungary was supposed to arrest Netanyahu upon his arrival. However, Orban said Hungary was leaving the ICC.
The reason is it has become our conviction that it has become a political court. So in recent years, it has become not a neutral legal court, but a political court. And this was most clearly shown by the decisions regarding Israel.
And Netanyahu thanked Orban for leaving the ICC, making Hungary the first country in the European Union to do so.
You've just taken a bold and principled position on the ICC, and I thank you, Victor. This is not only important for us, it's important for all democracies. The ICC directs its actions against us, fighting a just war with just means, and of course not against our tormentors.
In a statement, the ICC presidency expressed concern about Hungary's decision and urged it to stay committed to the ICC's founding agreement. Meanwhile, in the war in the Gaza Strip, Israeli forces have now taken over Rafah in the southern Gaza Strip. On Thursday, hundreds of thousands of residents fled from the city, many of whom ended up in nearby Khan Yunis.
I am telling you, I was packing my belongings with the plane hovering over our heads. Until when will this continue? Until when?
But even Khan Yunis isn't free from Israeli airstrikes. Residents were seen inspecting the aftermath of an Israeli airstrike that hit an area filled with tents.
Why is Netanyahu expanding the operation? What is the operation he is expanding?
And it appears that residents in the Gaza Strip continue to ask how long the war will continue and why it's happening, without mentioning the hostages that are still being held in the Gaza Strip. And that is what Israeli officials continue to repeat as the reason for the operations. Might the residents be afraid to mention the hostages because of possible retaliation from Hamas? According to a post on X from the official account from the State of Israel, a 22-year-old Palestinian man who recently participated in the protest in Gaza was tortured and killed, and his body was left at his family's doorstep. Jason Perry, NTD News.
Countries from around the world are responding to President Trump's new tariffs. Some say they're happy, while others are preparing countermeasures. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pazdar has the details on how different countries are reacting.
Canada's Prime Minister on Thursday, responding to the tariffs announced by President Trump. Prime Minister Mark Carney is announcing a tariff on American vehicles.
I'm announcing that the Government of Canada will be responding by matching the U.S. approach, with 25% tariffs on all vehicles imported from the United States that are not compliant with CUSMA, our North American Free Trade Agreement.
Carney also says the new tariffs won't apply to auto parts and won't affect vehicle content from Mexico. He previously announced that retaliatory tariffs will remain in effect. Carney also says that Canada will fight the U.S. tariffs until they're lifted. Mexico, meanwhile, celebrating that it's being excluded from the new general tariffs. Mexico's president also expresses satisfaction that the North American Free Trade Agreement will remain in force.
My understanding is that there wouldn't be tariffs on Mexico because Mexico doesn't place tariffs on the United States. There are no additional tariffs, not even for Canada, although in the case of Canada, there are a few in some specific areas.
The Trump administration is keeping the tariffs it imposed on Mexico earlier this year. Those are being tied to Mexico tackling security issues, such as illegal fentanyl trafficking. And Argentina's government is also expressing satisfaction with Trump's decision to impose lower tariffs on goods from Argentina.
President Milei said he was satisfied with having achieved the cheapest rates. We know about the excellent relationship we have with the United States. Our objective is to sign a free trade agreement.
China, however, is urging the U.S. to cancel its latest tariffs immediately. The Chinese regime is threatening retaliation if the U.S. doesn't lift the tariffs. And the European Union saying this on Thursday.
We are already finalizing the first package of countermeasures in response to tariffs on steel. And we're now preparing for further countermeasures.
And France, which is part of the EU, says the new tariffs will mostly affect the American economy.
The American economy and the American people will come out of this weaker and poorer than yesterday.
But while announcing possible countermeasures, the European Commission president added that she does agree with President Trump that some countries have been using trade rules to take unfair advantage of the U.S. Arian Pazdar, NTD News.
So what are some of the results that will come from President Trump's new reciprocal tariffs? To discuss, we have on Charles Benoit. He's a trade counsel for the Coalition for a Prosperous America. All right, Charles, thanks for taking the time with us today. Let's start with a clip from Vice President J.D. Vance on the sweeping reciprocal tariffs from the White House. Listen in for a minute.
For 40 years, we've had an economy that rewards people who ship American jobs overseas and raises taxes on American workers, and we're flipping that on its head. We're going to cut taxes for American workers and for American companies that build here. We're going to make it harder to ship American jobs overseas. It's a total shift in the way that we've done economic policy in the United States of America.
Charles, could you explain for us how this is a total shift in economic policy? And also, why do you think Trump essentially wants to revert back to the trade status we had in the 1930s?
Sure. Well, so that's exactly right. The only thing I would correct the vice president on there was it's been longer than 4 decades. You're right to go back to the World War II era. So that's when in 1934 Congress sort of handed over the reins to the president. We've been in the presidential tariff era ever since. I call it 1934 year zero. But one of the mistakes that every single president has made up until Donald Trump was to accept non-reciprocity. So there's something called the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. A lot of people have heard of it, the GATT. And that's kind of like the constitution that the WTO oversees. And under the GATT, every country kind of pledges maximum tariff rates across 5,000 product categories. We'd given up the most, and we'd never gotten any kind of reciprocity from most countries. We had nibbled here and there. We'd managed to get Japan to basically come down to our tariff rates, but then they found other ways to just not buy our stuff. So that's the jig was up. It was time, and the president was with the American, his broad American support to do what he did.
And with that being said, both the vice president and the president have noted that positive changes won't happen overnight. This is going to take some time. It seems like right now many are wanting to see immediate gratification in the prices. How long do you think Americans should expect to wait for results?
Well, so there's 2 things we're going to get positive results on. Federal revenue to use to offset domestic taxes, and I expect that this year. And then the protection element, so more jobs and more domestic investment. So we're already seeing tons of new greenfield investment. The president has done a lot to lay that out, so that's really encouraging. And then a big thing to pay attention to is the capacity utilization rate. So they point out our auto plants are only at 60% capacity. So a lot of people, won't necessarily be aware of that benefit, but rising tide lifts all boats, drives wages up. And so, yeah, you'll see. I think it'll be sooner than not. The president had a highly successful washing machine tariff in his first term. That was a 20% tariff on all washing machines up to 1.2 million, and then a 50% tariff on any subsequent washing machine imports. And that got LG and Samsung to invest over $1 billion in new factories in South Carolina and Tennessee. And so again, does every American immediately feel that? No. But there's some people who them and their families and their communities it's going to be game changing and a tremendous relief. And then likewise, I think that what other thing people should pay attention to is maybe $600 billion a year in new revenue that can pay for no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, which a massive amount of the American population will feel.
And now, Charles, Homeland Security Advisor Stephen Miller recently spoke about why these tariffs are a matter of national security, not just the economy. Let's together listen into what Stephen Miller had to say.
So if you look at America today, we're totally dependent on foreign countries for the supplies that make this country run, for all of the essential goods, materials, manufactured products that make it possible for us to live our lives. Our cars, our electronics, all the materials that go into our homes, our buildings, our medical supplies, our entire supply chains are completely embedded in foreign countries. So if there's a national emergency of any kind, and a country shuts off an import or a foreign power embargoes a sea lane, we are then left defenseless, helpless.
Now, Trump declared a national emergency over this, of course. Charles, talk to us about how serious this is.
Well, I think most Americans lived through this, right, with COVID and supply chain interruptions. I think that a lot of people don't appreciate with food now. We can't even feed ourselves. We're a net importer of food. And even just looking at that actually masks the fact that what we really grow are refined carbohydrates, but if you want protein, fat, or fiber, we're wildly import dependent. And so I'm talking from Western ranchers, U.S. lamb at this point might be gone from U.S. grocery stores within the decade, to fruit and vegetables. I'm down in Florida, and it's a catastrophe. The iconic staples, Florida oranges, disappearing. So we definitely need the case is clear. What President Trump is doing is historic because we had to learn this once prior in our history, and it was a long time ago. And it was at the outbreak of the the Napoleonic Wars. And Jefferson, we probably all vaguely remember hearing about the Embargo Acts, right? That's something we all kind of learned about in school. Well, that was the event. At the end of that War of 1812, we had the Tariff Act of 1816, and we basically enjoyed protective tariffs for a century, built self-reliance the hard way, and then through the 20th century and into this century, we've been spending that down.
What other impacts are there of goods being made in America?
Yeah, well, that's an excellent question. That's an excellent point. Globalization is not about more competition. It's about global consolidation. Right? We were down to like, there's one factory left in the world that makes microwaves, that kind of thing. China's overcapacity drives globalization around the world, whether it's in steel or automotive. And I'm quoting the CEO of Ford saying that. So globalization is actually reducing competition. I know it's counterintuitive, but we don't live in like a 17th century world of all artisan merchants trading things. Capital moves across borders very freely. We're not doing anything. We're not restricting capital. If you can make a better widget, you are welcome to, you can set up an LLC in America like that and get started and invest here and build here and compete in our market by paying American wages. So I think that you're going to see a lot more competition as capacity and across manufacturing expands, especially in this country. And that's going to be a good thing for prices and innovation in the long run.
All right, Charles, thanks for breaking it all down for us. We appreciate having you on the show tonight.
Anytime. Thanks so much.
And coming up next, the U.S. wants NATO allies to step up their defense spending. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and the newly confirmed U.S. ambassador to NATO met in Brussels today with NATO foreign ministers. And on Capitol Hill, David Perdue, Trump's pick to be the next ambassador to China, faces a confirmation hearing the day after the heaviest tariffs were levied on the U.S. adversary. That and more when we return.
I have never seen a production any better than this anywhere.
Breathtaking. It is absolutely stunning.
I feel better about the world. I feel uplifted.
Invigorating. It was encouraging. Gave me hope.
This has just been therapy for the soul.
It's a must-see. Must-see.
Make sure you see it. Make sure you see it.
Coming to Lincoln Center, March 26th through April 13th. Shenyun.com.
At Mathis Home, we understand that your home is a reflection of you. And during our spring style event, we have fresh new looks that are waiting to make your home look and feel great at the lowest prices. And with all the latest styles in bloom, you'll find savings in every department. Whether it's a clean and modern sectional or a rustic and traditional dining table, we have it in stock with fast and free delivery. Come find the look that's right for you at our spring style event at your furniture superstore, Mathis Home.
Hi friends, Richard Karn here. Now I'm known as the guy who can fix just about anything, but the technology in most appliances requires very special training to fix. My point is, even I know when I've met my match, and that's why my family has Choice Home Warranty. So we won't get stuck with high-priced repairs.
Choice Home Warranty covers over 25 major home systems and appliances. That's your AC, heating, plumbing, kitchen and laundry appliances, and so much more.
Imagine for less than a cup of coffee a day, Choice Home Warranty can help protect you from expensive major system and appliance breakdowns that your homeowner's insurance doesn't cover. But you have to call now before it's too late.
Every homeowner should have Choice Home Warranty. Your homeowner's insurance is not going to cover your appliances.
Washing machine, dryer, refrigerator, air condition. If I had any issues arise, they were able to take care of it immediately.
Now, homeowner's insurance won't protect you when your home's major systems and appliances break down due to normal wear and tear. But Choice Home Warranty will. They can help cover repairs and replacements.
Choice Home Warranty is the best warranty we've ever used. It would save you so much money in the long run.
Hey, I'm not the only one raving about Choice Home Warranty. They were named a Best Home Warranty Company and Best Claim Service by U.S. News 360 Reviews.
Call Choice Home Warranty now and get access to a nationwide network of over 15,000 technicians and the latest appointment setting technology so you'll know when they're on their way.
If I have an issue with an appliance or something around the house, I just call up Choice Home Warranty and I don't have to worry about that.
So, Do what this old DIYer did and call Choice Home Warranty now before something breaks down. Tell them I sent you and get your first month free.
Call Choice Home Warranty before it's too late and get protection for your heating, AC, plumbing, kitchen, and laundry appliances, and more. Call for your free quote today. Call in the next 5 minutes and get your first month free. 800-360-6782. 800-360-6782.
Welcome back. I'm Alina Weisskopf. You're watching the Capitol Report. Secretary of State Marco Rubio in Brussels met with newly confirmed ambassador to NATO. They're calling on allies to spend more on defense. That says President Trump has a track record of pushing these allies to contribute more. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has the details.
Events of the last few years, a full-scale ground war in the heart of Europe, is a reminder that hard power is still necessary as a deterrent.
The U.S. wants NATO allies to step up their defense spending.
This is a collection not just of partners and allies, but of advanced economies, of rich countries who have the capability to do more.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio and newly confirmed U.S. Ambassador to NATO, Matt Whitaker, were meeting NATO foreign ministers in Brussels on Thursday. Whitaker was confirmed in a 52-45 vote on Tuesday, and upon his confirmation, he affirmed an ironclad relationship with NATO, rebuilding Ukraine, taking seriously the threat from the Chinese regime, and having allies pay their fair share. The U.S. is pushing its allies to increase their defense spending to 5% of their GDP. As of now, no single NATO member meets that requirement, but Rubio says that he doesn't expect them to do this right away or even in the next couple of years. But they need to make progress toward this goal. The current requirement is at 2% of their GDP. As of now, 23 of the 32 members meet this benchmark. Italy and Spain, who have sizable economies, were among those who did not meet this target. But many allies in Brussels showing support for increasing their spending to the alliance.
The current levels of our defense expenditure are too low.
That we are going to increase our spendings for defense from the next year up to 5% at least.
But NATO will have to be fairer, and that means that we will have to increase spending.
It's now very much time also for Europe to take care of its own homework.
NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte has also been supportive of increased spending.
We know that the United States is a staunch ally in NATO, but that commitment comes with an expectation. And the expectation is that the European allies and Canada need to spend more.
Rutte also praised the Trump administration for making progress on ending the Russia-Ukraine war.
President Trump, the team, you broke the deadlock. You started a process of negotiations with our full support to bring the Ukraine war to a lasting, to a durable peace.
He also said that the Chinese Communist Party is closely watching the outcome of this war.
And ultimately there is an audience of one which will be judging the outcome of this war, and that is the first Secretary of the Communist Party of China, Mr. Xi Jinping. And he will be watching who comes out on top.
Secretary Rubio meeting with Indo-Pacific partners on Thursday on the sidelines of this NATO meeting as they agreed to stand up to China's aggression and unfair trade policies. The top diplomats will conclude their meeting on Friday, where they're looking to help move the ball for U.S. security plans in Ukraine and more broadly Europe. Reporting by Jack Bradley, NTD News.
So how will Secretary Rubio's NATO visit resonate with European leaders against the backdrop of President Trump's newly imposed tariffs and the war in Ukraine? Joining me now live to discuss these latest developments is Frank Gaffney. He's the former Assistant Secretary of Defense under President Reagan, and currently he serves as the president of the Institute for the American Future. Thank you, Frank, for joining us tonight.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So first of all, Frank, what are your biggest takeaways from Secretary of State Marco Rubio's trip to NATO?
Well, I think it sounds as though it's a work in progress to some extent, but he was conveying clearly the message that's top of mind, as your package makes clear, which is, are we still part of NATO, the United States? Does it regard it as a valuable alliance? And are we comfortable with what our allies in that alliance are doing in their own defense? And I think that, to some extent, the art of diplomacy is papering over differences, and I think there's some of that going on here. But it is striking that there seems to be a general consensus on the part of NATO allies who have, frankly, not carried their fair share of the burden, that they have to do more. The question is, how much more, how soon, and will it be enough? Because I think they're all now confronting a reality, as we should, which is that they're dealing with a Russian and Chinese alliance that is potentially willing to engage in further aggression of the kind that we've certainly seen Putin performing in Ukraine.
So help us to understand, Frank, what are President Trump's objectives with NATO, especially regarding U.S. leadership? And do you think it will change the relationship with European nations?
Well, look, let me divide this into two categories. One is what are the present expectations? And I think clearly they're more spending. They're trying to meet, he said now, a 5% of GDP goal. But let me just put on the table a couple of other things that I hope will be part of the conversations going forward, because they're very much needed. One is China. The president on the 21st of February promulgated what he calls a national security presidential memorandum saying, we are going to adopt an America first investment policy. We're going to stop having a China first investment policy, which has made a lot of the dangerous military buildup of China and other aggressive acts possible. We've financed it, and NATO allies need to stop doing that as well. So does Wall Street, for that matter, by the way. Another issue which I think is certainly on the minds of a lot of Europeans, and I hope NATO recognizes this as a serious problem, and that is what I call Sharia supremacism in the alliance. You have, in some cases, countries that may well be at the cusp of a civil war with Muslim populations that seek essentially to overthrow the established traditional civilization and leadership and institutions of those countries. And this is going to come to a head, I suspect, fairly quickly, because Turkey, a nominal NATO ally, but increasingly a very problematic one at that, is now moving into Syria in a way that may well bring them into violent conflict with Israel. And the question will arise, is the NATO alliance going to allow Article 5 to be invoked, coming to the aid of Turkey, especially if it's the aggressor in this case, against a nation that most, if not all of the nations of Europe regard as part of our Judeo-Christian civilization, namely the State of Israel. So these are things that I hope Donald Trump will be focusing on. I hope Marco Rubio will be talking about, and that we will, as an alliance, be addressing constructively and quickly.
So you spoke about the America First policy that Trump's pushing on the international front. Rubio also said, I'll read you the quote from him. He said, we also have domestic needs, but we've prioritized defense because of the role we play in the world, and we want our partners to do the same. Frank, do you find this expectation reasonable, especially considering Secretary Rubio stating that the U.S. is also increasing its defense spending?
Well, I'm heartened by that, because there's been a lot of talk that the U.S. is going to be cutting its defense spending. Now, it may be that we're going to be cutting some things but increasing other things, which makes eminent sense to me. But what I believe everybody in the alliance needs to be mindful of is we're confronting truly global challenges. And I emphasize the Chinese because I think they are very much bent on aggression in the Western Pacific. So NATO is going to have to bear more of the burden, because the United States probably will be preoccupied with very dangerous situations elsewhere in the world. We want to make sure that our commitment to NATO and our investment in our national security is matched by others who have at least as much on the line as we from threats, including this so-called no limits partnership between, on the one hand, Xi Jinping of China and Vladimir Putin of Russia.
Frank Gaffney, former Assistant Secretary of Defense, thank you so much for joining us today and for your insights.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, ma'am.
And in Congress, the Senate Foreign Relations Committee held its confirmation hearing for David Perdue to be the next ambassador to China. Our Washington correspondent Luis Martinez has more on the story.
Marxist nationalism is reshaping China, and their global ambitions threaten the current world order. Put simply, they want a world order more in line with their authoritarian principles.
David Perdue, a former senator from the state of Ohio, gave testimony before lawmakers he served with. Despite niceties, Democrats immediately pressed Senator Perdue on the Trump administration's policy towards U.S. allies vis-a-vis China.
Leadership is questioned in the world by our allies and those we have stood alongside. I think by the same logic, Xi will inevitably be emboldened to believe that he can take on his vision to reacquire Taiwan, the Philippines, the South China Sea.
Withdrawal is not an option for the United States. I don't think President Trump is attempting to do that. I think by reaching and stepping forward in the area of trade addresses some of the questions that you bring up there. Our allies, we have to align and make sure they understand the threat and develop a cohesive strategy.
Senator Rick Scott, the Republican from Florida, highlighted the human rights abuses of the CCP and in particular the persecution of religious groups internationally, including Falun Gong practitioners.
So the Communist Party sends fentanyl into the United States, killed 78,000 people last year. They treat the Uyghurs horribly. They don't follow any trade rules. They never comply with the WTO. It's a despicable government.
Our support of China over the last 30 years or more, also the violations in the World Trade Organization, we've turned a blind eye to. Those days are over, I believe, and I think we've got to stand up.
Senator Scott pressed Senator Perdue on the impact of U.S. tariffs on China and the economic relations in between both countries.
But if we stop buying their stuff, what will happen?
Well, if foreign capital from the U.S. stops going into China, they have a real problem.
If we stop buying their product, what will happen?
Well,
the American public says enough's enough. What will happen to their economy?
It'll collapse.
Right. Thank you.
Senator Perdue served one term in the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and in the Senate Armed Services Committee. He was endorsed by President Trump back in 2021 when he attempted to become the next governor of Georgia, and he's expected to be confirmed by the Senate to be the next U.S. ambassador to China in the coming week. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
President Trump says he's in favor of proxy votes for new parents, a resolution that caused a standoff between House Speaker Mike Johnson and Florida Republican Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna. The president said he's going to let Johnson make the final decision, but that he likes the idea. The House is expected to vote on a Democrat Congresswoman's resolution to allow new parents in Congress to vote by proxy for up to 12 weeks. Congresswoman Luna has forced to vote on the resolution. That's after House Republican leadership failed to block her on it. 9 Republicans joined all of the Democrats to allow Luna's petition to move forward. Then the House canceled votes for the rest of the week. Speaker Johnson wrote on X that this blocked the House from advancing President Trump's agenda this week. Fellow Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene lashed out at Luna, saying, quote, "Being in Congress is a privilege. GOP leadership maintains the Constitution requires in-person voting to form a quorum." And coming up next, a report says that DOGE accounts for a big chunk of March U.S. job cuts. Plus, the department announces the cancellation of a pricey contract at the Department of Veterans Affairs. And are Trump's economic policies ultimately worth the short-term impact? Join us as Republican strategist Chet Love and Wisconsin-based Democratic strategist Joe Zepecki weigh in to assess when we return.
As we naturally age, many people are getting zero amount of this incredible and unique substance. That's when we start seeing an impact in our joints, skin, nails, and even our digestion.
People ask me, Dr. X, what is the #1 supplement I should be taking? My answer is multi-collagen protein.
People's reactions to me, people were like, what are you doing? What is going on? You look amazing. You have a glow about you.
What makes Ancient Nutrition Multi-Collagen stand out from other brands? 10 types of collagen. It's grass-fed, pasture-raised with vitamin C and probiotics. It's proven to reduce joint discomfort rapidly, continuously, and persistently. It improves the appearance of crow's feet after 4 weeks and improves skin tone after 8 weeks. And it promotes hair thickness, growth, and a reduction in hair breakage.
It has transformed everything from my hair. Like, my hair was starting to kind of just, come out, and I don't have that anymore. My skin feels amazing.
Call the number on your screen and find out how to get a free bottle when you order, plus free shipping and our 30-day money-back guarantee. And as a bonus, we will include Dr. Josh Axe and Jordan Rubin's revolutionary book, Multi-Collagen Makeover, free with your order, plus free shipping and free returns.
I have implicit trust in Dr. Axe because the plan worked. I am living proof of it.
This is the collagen protein that is backed by clinical studies. It's what my family uses, it's what I use, and I know you're going to benefit in a big way as well.
Love the results or get your money back. This special TV offer is not available in stores. Call the number on your screen or go online now.
We said we'd never break the 3-second rule. We'd never make a separate dinner. And never do that. We'd never let them sleep in our room. And never become a minivan mom.
Hey, Chris. Okay, well, I'm not at my desk right now.
As parents, we say never a lot, but never happens. So when you say you'd never leave your child in a hot car, know it can happen. Before you leave the car, always stop, look, lock.
Welcome back to the Capitol Report. I'm Alina Weisskopf. A new report says that recommendations from the Department of Government Efficiency have resulted in almost 80% of the job cuts that took place last month. NTD correspondent Jason Blair has the DOGE update from Washington, D.C.
According to a new report, there were just over 275,000 reported job cuts to the U.S. workforce in March, an estimated 79% of which came as a result of DOGE recommendations. The March cuts represent a 60% increase over February and are the highest since the spring of 2020. The report is from Challenger, Gray & Christmas, a global outplacement and business executive coaching firm. The report says that DOGE's recommendations in the past 2 months led to over 280,000 planned layoffs over 27 agencies, plus 4,500 more resulting from cutting federal aid and contracts. And DOGE also announced it has uncovered a Veterans Affairs contract worth $380,000 a month for, quote, minor website modifications. The department canceled the contract, saying the duties were transferred to an internal software engineer who spends 10 hours a week on the work. And finally, 5 disability rights groups are suing DOGE, the Social Security Administration, and Elon Musk over recent layoffs. The groups say the job cuts are unconstitutional and harm people who have disabilities. The Social Security Administration sends checks to about 73 million retired and disabled Americans each month. According to the lawsuit, the plaintiffs are individuals with disabilities who depend on Social Security benefits to meet their, quote, most basic and essential needs. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Jason Blair, NTD News.
Are Trump's economic policies worth the short-term impacts? And what is the significance of the Wisconsin Supreme Court race? We're happy to have on Republican strategist Chet Love and Wisconsin-based Democratic strategist Joe Zepecki. Joe and Chet, thanks for joining. So we're just going to jump right in. First of all, J.D. Vance commented on the Liberation Day, of course, that Trump is dubbing it. It took place yesterday. Let me play a clip and get the reactions from both of you guys. Listen in.
I think it's useful for all of us to step back and ask ourselves, what has the globalist economy gotten the United States of America? And the answer is fundamentally it's based on 2 principles: incurring a huge amount of debt to buy things that other countries make for us. And to make it a little bit more crystal clear, we borrow money from Chinese peasants to buy the things those Chinese peasants manufacture. That is not a recipe for economic prosperity.
Chet, first of all, we're going to start with you. Do you think this is the right way to frame it? Is Liberation Day worth the short-term impacts?
Absolutely. At the end of the day, what are we needing to do as a country that's trillions of dollars in debt? We have to cut spending and we have to raise revenue. Listen, everybody does this today in their homes. If you're in debt, what do? You got to figure out how to tighten the belt, right? And maybe go take a second job and figure out how to raise revenue. And so what we see is President Trump's agenda, which is to increase tariffs, which then has a revenue generating effect, as well as the work that he's doing with DOGE to cut federal spending, which is critically important at this time with such a huge national debt.
Joe, what are your thoughts on this? But I also want to ask you just specifically about the idea of deregulation. Do you think that that could help bring back manufacturing to the U.S.?
Well, which is it? I mean, the Trump administration has to pick a lane. They are taking an enormous risk with this tariff policy. Today, the only thing that people are being liberated from is what's in their 401ks as the market crashes again. Every leading economist is saying this is not a long-term solve. And finally, you saw Republicans, at least in the United States Senate, stand up yesterday and try to say, stop this madness. This is going to drive up prices for American consumers. And by the way, it's not a one-way street. We don't just buy goods from around the world. 85% of the customers for small businesses live outside of America. This is going to be bad. It is only a question of how bad it gets before the Trump administration blinks.
Now, guys, let's switch lanes for a minute and talk about a case involving New York City Mayor Eric Adams. On Wednesday, a federal judge permanently dismissed the criminal case against the mayor, saying this was avoid linking the mayor's freedom with his ability to enforce immigration policies. Joe, do you think the judge made the right call?
I do. The judge appears to be the only sane actor in this drama. The notion that they were going to dismiss this case, but then keep it holding over his heads to try and compel Mayor Adams to do what the Trump administration wants. I mean, it's extortion, it's mob tactics, and it was ridiculous. The judge did the right thing by tossing it.
Chet, is there anything substantive in the investigation to begin with, do you think?
I think the fact that you had the Biden administration's DOJ that was going after Eric Adams from what, based on the reports, crimes that they said alleged took place back in 2014, I just think was absurd. I think it clearly was politically motivated because Eric broke with a political party and decided to talk about the issues of immigration and how it was impacting his community. And now we see him running as an independent in this next election and saying he's going to put New Yorkers first, which is clearly what he did because he certainly made the Democratic Party very angry at him.
I want to switch over and talk about the Wisconsin Supreme Court race. So many were saying that this was going to put Trump's popularity and his policies so far to the test. Of course, what was considered the liberal candidate won that election. Joe, have you been in touch with Democrats on the ground? And if you have, how are they responding?
I have. I'm in Wisconsin, and the shot heard around the world of that 10-point drubbing that Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and the conservative judge took on Tuesday night is reverberating. I don't think it's happenstance or coincidence that Democratic members of Congress today and this week are basically taunting Elon Musk and saying, please come spend money against me because it backfired here. Tuesday night's results show how deeply unpopular the Trump administration's actions thus far have been. That's what we saw in the results.
Chet, what do you have to say about this? Do you think Elon Musk should be taking the blame for the outcome?
No, I mean, one, I fundamentally disagree with what Joe's saying here. One, we had two elections that happened in April. One was in Wisconsin, one was in Florida. Wisconsin was a Supreme Court race. It was not for an actual elected official. The elected official race that we saw that happened in Florida, the Democrats got trounced. And we went from a R+9 to like a R+21 district. The reality is that Elon Musk is doing something that's extremely unique for billionaires. Elon Musk is actually coming out and being extremely transparent in terms of what he's doing. And he's going on national television to be interviewed by reporters to talk about his contributions. This is what we should be saying as America. We want people to be more transparent in our political process and instead of less transparent. I mean, if you look at the polling that went into this Supreme Court race, Crawford was ahead the entire time. And yeah, I mean, the Democrats certainly won, but I don't think this is reflective of Donald Trump or Donald Trump's policies or a referendum on Elon Musk in any way whatsoever.
I do want to just correct the record on Chet real quick. We elect all of our judges in Wisconsin. These are regularly scheduled. We had one in 2023. This is how we do it in Wisconsin. And to the Florida point, Democrats overperformed the November elections in both of those Florida specials. And the takeaway ought to be Elon Musk's millions can't save these Republican candidates.
Look, at the end of the day, Democrats got murdered in the presidential election. It was embarrassing. They lost every single swing state, and they haven't found the messaging. They've lost their message, and they're struggling to find a message, and they're literally clinging on to anything that they could possibly try to find to create some kind of chink in this armor that President Trump has created. His approval ratings are the highest he's ever had. This is just another sad attempt at them to try to rewrite a narrative that they've lost complete control over.
Thank you, Chet and Joe, for bringing both sides of the aisle to the discussion today. We appreciate your time.
Have a good one.
And coming up next, severe tornadoes from Texas to the Northeast have claimed several lives and left tens of thousands without power. Officials warn more tornadoes and heavy rains are still on the way. President Trump's global tariffs sending shockwaves across Wall Street and the world. We'll hear from folks here in Washington, D.C. about their confidence in the economy, that and more when we return.
The bladder control aisle. You won't shop here again. Your private business is your own. The constant struggle is over. Now there's a better way. It's HDIS. We home deliver bladder control products. We understand how you feel. For over 25 years, we've home delivered to many of the 20 million Americans who deal with incontinence. We offer all brands. We pay shipping and use plain, unmarked boxes. If we can help you or someone you care for, call for your free product sample pack and $45 in money-saving coupons. Our counselors will help you choose the right product. And unlike stores, we're always in stock. You'll get what you need. Satisfaction guaranteed. HDIS, the better way.
For your free sample pack with your free catalog, $45 in money-saving coupons, and free product samples, call 1-800-701-6159. That's 1-800-701-6159.
Welcome back to Capitol Report. I'm Alina Weisskopf filling in for Steve Lance tonight. New York City Mayor Eric Adams is shaking up the 2025 race, announcing he'll skip the Democratic primary and instead run for re-election as an independent. Here's Adams.
Although I am still a Democrat, I am announcing that I will forego the Democratic primary for mayor and appeal directly to all New Yorkers as an independent candidate in the general election.
Adams recently shared his plans with Politico. He says he'll build a campaign focused on public safety with an emphasis on ethnic minorities, a voting bloc that was key to his 2021 victory. He also criticized his party, arguing Democrats have been too soft on crime and immigration. The decision follows a federal bribery case against Adams, which was dismissed last week. With low approval ratings and no access to public campaign funds, he faces an uphill battle. His independent run sets up a major showdown in November against the Democratic nominee, possibly former Governor Andrew Cuomo, and a Republican challenger. In widespread devastation after a deadly tornado tore through parts of the South and Midwest yesterday. But the danger isn't over, with more severe weather on the way and potential historic flooding now expected in several areas. NTD's Christina Corona has the latest on this.
At least 7 people have lost their lives due to the storm that tore through the U.S. on Wednesday, including 5 in Tennessee, 1 in Missouri, and 1 in Indiana. 13 others were injured. At least 19 tornadoes tore through communities, destroying structures, overturned vehicles, and downed trees. The National Weather Service confirmed that tornadoes in Lake City, Arkansas, and Selmer, Tennessee, on Wednesday night and early Thursday were at least EF3s. The Selmer tornado had winds of 160 miles per hour, while the Lake City tornado reached 150 miles per hour. Mississippi Governor Tate Reeves provided an update during a press conference Thursday, reporting that 6 people were injured due to the severe weather that hit the state the previous night. There have been no fatalities reported.
Damage assessments are currently underway. At this time, at least 60 homes have received damage across 5 counties.
Benton, Bolivar, Marshall, Tate, and Tippah counties were affected.
The Mississippi Emergency Management Management Agency is in contact with local emergency managers and is in the process of filling requests for tarps, water, and food for impacted counties.
The storms also knocked out power to hundreds of thousands of residents, leaving over 213,000 customers across 8 states, including Indiana, Ohio, Texas, Kentucky, Arkansas, Tennessee, Missouri, and Mississippi without power early Thursday. As the storm system continues, Arkansas, Missouri, Tennessee, and Mississippi are bracing for a potentially historic generational flood event. Forecasters warn that some areas could see up to 15 inches of rain through the weekend, leading to possible river flooding. Some areas will see warnings for more tornadoes, hail, and life-threatening flooding. According to the Storm Prediction Center, a level 4 out of 5 risk of severe thunderstorms are in effect for parts of northeastern Texas, southeastern Oklahoma, and much of Arkansas on Friday. A tornado watch is currently in effect for over 5 million people across Tennessee, Kentucky, Mississippi, and Arkansas, lasting until 10 p.m. Central Daylight Time. Christina Corona, NTD News.
And speaking at the Rose Garden yesterday, President Trump announced a round of sweeping tariffs on nations across the globe. How are everyday Americans reacting to the news? NTD's Sam Wong was out on the National Mall in D.C. to hear from the people.
So President Trump issued a round of global tariffs. The world's reacting, the market's reacting. How are you guys reacting to it?
Well, I think it'll be good because NATO and all the other countries been taking advantage of the United States for years, and they've been getting away with it. And I think it's time to put a stop to it.
I think this is kind of tricks at Trump's exit from the global stage, and I think it's going to set us up for austerity measures that are going to lead to problems you see in other countries.
I believe that our national deficit is a detriment in the long term. Look at Detroit. I mean, it was amazing, and now it's, almost down to zero. How many cars are made here? Not many.
People need to be able to buy their groceries every day and need to be able to buy produce and meats and be able to feed their kids. So I don't think it's the way to go.
Certainly this country was based on tariffs back before income taxes were placed on us. But I think for the first time, maybe since the GI Bill, the working class is going to really benefit from this.
Back in the, 1920s, we didn't have taxation on our people. Now that tariffs are put in place, I do believe my children will be able to live part of their life no taxes.
So President Trump said the main objective of this round of tariffs is to onshore investments and bring manufacturing back home to the United States. And the caveat is there's going to be short-term pain. I guess the question here would be, are you willing to buy the bullet, at least for now?
Absolutely. It would be nice to bring some manufacturing back because we've lost so much over the past decades.
We've been biting the bullet for the last 4 years, so we can bite it a little bit longer.
It doesn't happen overnight. As most people would tell you, to build the infrastructure, it takes a decade, half a decade even to get started with something like that. Never mind that labor costs in the U.S. will never really allow manufacturing to compete on a global level.
Oh, for short term, absolutely. And I have no problem in general with reciprocal tariffs. Yeah, I think if we knew exactly when things will even out, I'd be more comfortable with it, but for right now, we don't know what short term really means.
Anything worth anything, marriage, love, cement flooring, monuments, anything, you got to put the pain and the effort in, but you get the long-term benefit and it's permanent.
Well, I certainly am, but we seem to be a pretty impatient people. All good things take a little time, and all growth has a little pain.
The famous cherry blossoms aren't the only pretty sight in the nation's capital. The adult male painting bunting, as you see here, is a songbird adorned in vibrant blue, green, yellow, and red. There are 2 populations, the eastern and western birds, breeding mainly in the coastal southeast and the south central U.S., rare in Washington. They've been spotted about the city and calling on bird enthusiasts. That's all we have for you tonight on the Capitol Report. For round-the-clock original news coverage, visit us at ntd.com/live or download our NTD app. From the nation's capital, I'm Alina Weisskopf. Have a great evening. We'll see you back here tomorrow.
Hey, boss. Okay?
Yeah, I'm good.
You sure?
I said I'm fine.
Since I was little, it was only like me and my parents.
You think you created family out of characters?
Yeah, of course.
I'm gonna take that, make it into a song.
Put me to bed, see you in the morning. With the frosted Superman, but it wasn't on it. And we lost it. In my head, in my head, in my head. Where you at, on the way out? In my head, in my head, in my head.
Hey, son.
Hey, Pop.
You can talk to me.